Good evening and welcome to ET Now Startup Central, India's first and only daily show dedicated to startups, technology and entrepreneurship. I'm Chandra Shrikant, coming to you live from India's startup capital, Bengaluru. And we kick it off then with a startup not founded in India but founded in the US nearly 20 years back. Now, in its earlier avatar, it was called Elance. It then merged with Odesk and became Upwork. And this startup, or this company rather, has now gone public on NASDAQ. If you're wondering what the India connection is, it was founded by two Indians, Beerud Sheth as well as Srini, in the late 90s. It is a freelancing marketplace. It went through a number of changes before it gained its current avatar is Upwork, and it's now listed on NASDAQ. Now, a lot of people are talking about Upwork because clearly we are in a phase where people are talking about the gig economy, how this is perhaps going to be the next big thing. But we have the original founder of Upwork joining us on Startup Central, who perhaps envisioned this way back in the late 90s when the term gig economy wasn't so widely talked about. I'm talking about Beerud Sheth, a very special guest on Startup Central who joins us all the way from New York. Now, Elance was his first venture, but after exiting Upwork, he's now managing Gupshup'c, which is a messaging platform. Beerud, thank you so much for joining us on ET Now. 20 years to IPO, multiple changes in between. How did it feel really ringing in that bell on NASDAQ, and in a sense ringing in the gig economy on a listed platform?
Yes, that's right. It's been a very long and hard journey, required a lot of patience and perseverance. But finally, the reward was very sweet. It's indeed a big milestone. It's still not the end of the journey. It's just a milestone. But it's very gratifying, right? I mean, as an entrepreneur, you work really hard. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears go into it, a lot of challenges. And I think to successfully achieve this milestone is very gratifying, very exciting. But more than the financial outcome, right, is also the fact that we've touched upon millions of lives. As you know, Upwork helps millions of freelancers earn a livelihood all over the world in 180 plus countries. And the massive impact, the far-reaching impact it has on people, it really just, really moves you. And we used to dream about these things a long time ago, but to actually see it happen and to see it on the market is really unbelievable, very gratifying, very exciting, and just very happy about it.
Does some part of you still wish that you were perhaps involved in the operations of Upwork at a time when it's going public? I mean, you are, still involved perhaps as an investor in some sense with a stake in the company. But, you've moved on from that. You're now the CEO of Gupshup'c. But did some part of you perhaps hope that maybe you should have waited it out for a few years?
I know. Well, I think, there's so many exciting things to do. So I did play my role in the beginning. I was the CEO and then the VP and so on. And, things happen. We built up a big team, and I think I'm super excited about the team that's driving Upwork right now. They're very capable. I have no complaints. I still have all my stake in the company. I'm a big believer. I'm the #1 cheerleader and fan of the company. But I think Gupshup'c is doing great as well. Hopefully that'll have some similar outcome too. We'll see. But as an entrepreneur, this is what you can hope for, right? Which is to be in exciting projects that can really, realize their potential, realize the dream, have an impact on lots of lives, and also employees, shareholders, everybody benefits from it. So I'm having fun. I have no regrets. It was long and hard journey, but that is actually the untold story of Silicon Valley or of entrepreneurship, right? Which is, these are not overnight successes, or it may feel that way to an observer, but behind the scenes, it takes many, many years sometimes to achieve this, right? And oftentimes the media projects a funding round as success, and these are just sort of intermediate milestones, including an IPO. But what we built is a real company. Upwork is a real company, a company for the ages, and I think it's going to, continue to have a lot of impact around the world.
Right, right. I'm sure there's, a lot of blood, sweat and tears behind everything that we call an overnight success. That's a rather abused term. But, Beerud, I mean, at least, in the last couple of years, people are talking more and more about a gig economy, how we have to rethink jobs, especially in India, where we are seeing a variety of jobs being created because of startups, because of India perhaps being an assisted economy rather than a do-it-yourself economy. But how did you really envision the potential for, a marketplace for freelancers way back in the late 90s? And how does it compare to what you're seeing today, which is this huge surge in the gig economy, and companies are actually reworking HR and culture to accommodate the way millennials work, because they don't have a typical structured way of working.
Right. In fact, the original idea, the vision came about from three influences, my personal experiences, right, which is one, being from India, recently moved to the U.S. at that time. I knew that there were talented people all over the world, right? Number two, I knew that I was studying computer science and computer technology was connecting the world. It's obvious now, but in the mid-90s, it was a very new phenomena. And third, I used to work on Wall Street, where I knew you could create marketplaces even for illiquid products like services. Just combining all of these three influences, we came up with this global services marketplace. And, to this day, that continues to play out. And since then, the term that we've coined, the gig economy, is starting to impact people all over the world. You can work without limits. Distances don't matter. Skill and talented people are all over the world. And I think we barely scratched the surface. If you think about it, people are struggling with this 9-to-5 traditional salaried jobs. People want the flexibility, the ability to live anywhere, work for anyone, work at any time. Millennials in particular are continuing to drive this trend even more. So I think, and if you think about it, by the way, India has been the biggest beneficiary of outsourcing. Well, this is, taking outsourcing to its logical extreme, which is it's not just for big projects done by Infosys, but it's also done, outsourcing can also apply to small micro projects done by any business, small business or entrepreneur anywhere in the world, right? So I think this trend is only going to continue. Upwork has barely scratched the surface. It does about 1.5 to 2 billion of gross service value, as it calls it. But the potential is for a few hundred billion, because literally the entire GDP that's focused on services can be impacted by the gig economy. And think about the impact of gig economy, right? Even companies like Uber and DoorDash and Ola and Swiggy, I mean, these are all sort of variations on the same theme, which is you can get a driver when you want or a food delivery person when you want and so on, right? So the world is moving towards flexibility. The gig economy continues to thrive and expand way beyond its original ideas. And, I think it's just amazing to see that the original ideas morphed and grown and evolved into so many variations. And, really, Elance was literally the first one back in 1998. And to see where it's come is just really exciting.
Right. If this was founded in India, do you think it would have lasted 20 years, leave alone an IPO? Because people still say that tech IPOs perhaps are valued more in the US. India, we are beginning to see exits like what happened with Flipkart and Walmart. People are talking about a few IPOs from the unicorn space. But do you think this idea would have succeeded in India?
The Indian tech ecosystem is very nascent, right? And it requires a lot of maturity. Silicon Valley has benefited from decades of evolution, of trial and error, patience, perseverance, so on and so forth, right? I think the Indian ecosystem needs to go through that. Also, it's not a fair comparison because back in '98, the Indian tech ecosystem was very nascent. I mean, those were the very early days. There's a lot of friction. I mean, if you think about some of the challenges that Elance and Upwork have had to deal with, We built out a global payment and billing system across 180 countries in different currencies. There's so many regulations that we have to deal with, labor regulations and laws and so on. And, the old laws never anticipated new ideas like this, right? So you need a flexible regulatory ecosystem. You need investors, patient investors willing to support companies for this long, and so on. So I think I'm confident that India will get there, but when I did it back in '98, I think it would have been a lot harder to do that in India than it was possible to do it in the Valley.
Right. But do you think things are changing now, Beerud? I mean, we've seen so many unicorns emerge this year. There's a lot of buzz around startups. We are seeing investors with big pockets, not just hedge funds or, VCs, but also many strategic investors placing big bets on the Indian ecosystem. So, where does it stand today compared to, say 5 years back or 10 years back? Are we in a much better place today?
Yeah, I think we are, I would say in the early to mid stages of the maturation of the Indian tech ecosystem, right? The fact that there are big bets being placed, companies getting ambitious, expanding very rapidly is all good. But let's not confuse, just funding milestones for a real profitable, sustainable business that can go public, for example, right? Because a lot of these big bets are really just about a land grab, right? We just spend all the money, acquire all the customers you can, and then wait for a later period in time where you can start monetizing it profitably and sustainably. So let's not confuse sort of intermediate successes for conclusion of the entrepreneurial journey, right? So I think we are still in the middle stages of this evolution, and a lot of these companies have to turn the corner, right? E-commerce has to get profitable. Many other companies, and there's nothing wrong with it, by the way. Amazon did the same thing. They were unprofitable for a long time before they finally turned the corner. So we are using the same playbook. And I'm very optimistic, of course, with the Indian tech ecosystem and growth. But we still have a few innings to play out before we know where it ends up.
Right. On that note, thank you so much for taking time and joining us all the way from New York on Startup Central, and we will look forward to more conversations in future as well. But thanks for joining us on the show. Moving away from that really interesting story, a 20-year journey to IPO of a startup founded in the US, we come back to a topic that's been making news in India in the last week, and that, of course, is Aadhaar.